Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeremy Leffler, and I work in the Policy Office in the Division of Institution and Award Support at the National Science Foundation. And it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the first webinar of our 2023 Policy Office series. Today, we'll be covering the revised formats for the NSF Biographical Sketch and current and pending other support in both the SciENcv and NSF formats. We're happy and excited that you can join us, and I'm now pleased to turn this presentation over to today's speakers.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm very delighted to be here. Can we move on to the next slide, please? My name is Jean Feldman. I am head of the Policy Office in the Division of Institution and Award Support at NSF, which is located in the Office of Budget, Finance, and Award Management. And I'm really delighted to be joined by Bart Trawick. Many of you know Bart. He is the Director of the Customer Services Division in the National Library of Medicine at NIH. Next slide, please. Well, we have an agenda here that we hope and have been designed to be helpful to you. We're going to be providing what we believe is background, context, answers, and solutions to some of what we have seen in the last week or so since we've issued these actual formats that you can start using. And so we have very much taken all that feedback to heart in putting this session together. And in particular, Bart has done that in terms of formulating his presentation as well. And at the end, as Jeremy mentioned, we hope to have some time to answer questions that we haven't already addressed in the presentation to be able to maximize what coverage we have regarding these new formats. So next slide, please. So what the policy context is really very important to understanding what we're trying to achieve here with the revision of the biographical sketch and current and pending other support. First of all, they were announced as part of the NSF Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, which came out in October, NSF 23-1. And as you all, and we can definitely tell by the great uptick in questions, that you know what the deadline is and you know when you need to start using these. These are effective for proposals submitted or due on or after January 30, 2023. It includes the new certification requirements from NDAA 2021, Section 223, regarding information being accurate, current, and complete. And these also implement NSPM 33 and the NSFPM 33 implementation guidance, which really gets to consistent disclosure requirements for senior personnel and for common formats for both the biographical sketch and current and pending support. And we definitely also throughout this are encouraging the use of the ORCID ID. It is an encouragement and not a requirement, and Bart will be covering in his presentation how that actually works in the SciENcv system. Next slide, please. So let me talk a minute about certification requirements, and we have been getting a lot of questions in about this. NDAA 2021-223 required that senior personnel certify that their information is accurate, current, and complete. And in the SciENcv, the certification is completed upon download, and the certification and the actual timestamp is included on the PDF. For the fillable forms, the senior personnel have to type their name and date on the form, and then this is actually printed on the form. So to some answers, we're getting lots of questions about what do I do about an electronic signature? Do I have to have a digital signature that we have to add to it? Do I have to have some form of electronic signature? Do I need to use DocuSign? With regard to the fillable format, what you need to do is type the name and the date in the form. Nothing more is required of you. So we're hoping that that will answer all the questions that we're getting. We know that it is not as robust as what you're going to see in SciENcv, but guess what? We're pushing you towards SciENcv. Next slide, please. So in terms of the initial disclosures and reminders of when things have to be provided, corrected, updated, at proposal submission, the PI, co-PI, and all senior personnel submit collaborators and other affiliations via that Excel spreadsheet that we all know that you love, the biographical sketch, and current and pending and other support. Updated current and pending support may be requested by the NSF program officer if it is something that is being considered for recommendation for award. And those will have to be submitted by the senior personnel, but it has to go through another question. It has to go through the AOR before an award can be made. Now, let me tell you, in terms of the content for what you're seeing on the biographical sketch and current and pending support, that's very different in 23-1, is we're doing a bit of a road test here. As you know, the government is looking at the development of creating harmonized formats for the biographical sketch and current and pending support for use by all federal research agencies. And we put a document, the National Science Foundation, on behalf of the Research Security Subcommittee of the National Science and Technology Council, put out formats. And we've got some comments that we did receive, but we wanted to take a further road test. And so what we have included in the 23-1 formats is more information that you will be seeing, we believe, in the future in those federal-wide formats. So this is going to give us also some great additional feedback that can be used to respond to any questions that we receive. Post-award, if the AOR discovers that a disclosure should have been made but was not, they have 30 days to submit a post-award request. Previously, prior to January 30, that was submitted as an other request in the research.gov notification and request module. And we have now done a new post-award request notification to NSF because we were finding that the other request did not provide you sufficient space to provide all the information that you need to provide. So take note of that. You will be using that new notification for post-award notifications of information. Obviously, you're also providing these. PIs and co-PIs have, for a number of years, had to provide new active other support that they've received. If it's they haven't submitted the first annual, it's from the actual project proposal that they've submitted. And if you submitted an annual report since you submitted your first annual report. So we hope that will help clear up some of those issues as well. Next slide, please. Now, the timeline, again, we believe that we have listened to you in a way that will be very helpful for the community. So our original intent, starting January 30, was to go straight to SciENcv. Some of the feedback that we've received had said, we're not quite ready to go there yet. The foundation listened. So you can now use both SciENcv and the NSF fillable formats through October 22nd, 2023. Beginning October 23rd, 2023, we are making that move to SciENcv. And we think that will ultimately be very helpful because of the great enhancements that Bart and his team have added to SciENcv to make it a great usable system for our senior personnel. Next slide, please. So we have a policy office website, a separate one for the biographical sketch, and a separate one for current and pending other support. And I am really, really delighted to say that about an hour ago, I sent out an email to the community, letting the community know that we just posted today new NSF fillable formats that address a number of the issues that you have made so far. For the current and pending support, we've corrected the status of support radio button. We've corrected the fonts and margins to make them compliant with NSF policy. And we've now included the revision date, revised 1/19/2023, at the bottom of each page. For the biographical sketch, we've corrected the margins for compliance with NSF policy, and we've included the revision date at the bottom of each page. So those are available for your use now, and those corrections have been made. We've also received feedback on the SciENcv templates. And what we're going to do is hopefully in the Monday timeframe, when Bart gives me the big go, we're going to send out a notice to you that we've made some enhancements to those formats as well. And we will let you know in an email what kinds of changes on Monday, hopefully, that we have made to those templates. Next slide, please. This is just a picture of the other support, current and pending other support. And again, it will take you directly to that 119 version. And we're very excited that those are out there. Next slide. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bart. And he's going to go through SciENcv and some great information that will help you navigate use of SciENcv, hopefully sooner rather than later. Just because we put that little delay out there doesn't mean we don't want you to use SciENcv. In fact, just the opposite. We want you to kick those tires, start using SciENcv, and really, really encourage your faculty to do so as well. Bart. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Jean. It's really a pleasure to be here speaking to everyone. We have a really great crowd. I'm going to just take a second. I'm going to switch over to my slides. All right. So as Jean mentioned, I will be giving an overview of SciENcv for those of you who are not quite familiar with it, but my talk is going to be a little more practical this time. We're going to look at some of the ins and outs of using SciENcv, what changes have come with this latest set of form and how we're supporting that, and how you can get your information into it quickly and efficiently. All right, so what are some of the updates that we're going to be talking about today? As Jean mentioned, ORCID and persistent identifiers that ORCID provides are being encouraged now. I'm going to show you how to add ORCID IDs, how we've kind of elevated the prominence of ORCID identifiers in the forms. The forms have some new information that's captured. I'm going to point that out. We're going to see how it differs from the previous forms to the current forms. The most exciting thing for me personally is we've rolled out a new interface to assist you with filling out the current and pending other support form. And so we're going to take a look at that. Jean mentioned we have document certification, and she described how in the fillable format, you have to type in a name and a date, and it's even easier in SciENcv. So we're going to look at that. You'll see how that happens. And finally, I know that especially in this crowd that we have today, there's a lot of people that act as delegates for PIs. And I'm going to kind of show how the view looks from the delegates. What do they see? How are they able to assist the investigator that's filling out this information? And how does the certification process work with them as well? All right, so let's get into it. SciENcv has been around for several years now. In fact, the NIH and NSF were both at the table during the inception. And the key feature is to make things easier for investigators. We know that you're often having to report the same type of information each grant cycle. How can we make that easier to fill these forms out? And one way is leveraging data that they might already have existing in some system. And this also helps agencies such as the NSF and NIH, because we're able to ingest this information and track the impact of federal dollars that are going out in grants. We currently support NIH biosketches, NSF biosketches, the current and pending other support. We also support Department of Education IES biosketches, and it's integrated with several different systems. And we're going to take a look at all of that. But simply put, there are two major forms that SciENcv can help produce for you as part of the grant application process. Biographical sketches, which are simply kind of a short little resume of an investigator, and the financial support forms for NSF is the current and pending other support. And what I like to do, you're going to see me talking in analogies. I like to use analogies to kind of describe things, especially when I'm talking to my parents about what I do, so they get an idea. And one way I describe SciENcv for them that works, this is the time of year that we all get excited because we have to start working on our federal income taxes. And I'm sure many of you might use some type of tax preparation software, whether it's TurboTax or Free Tax USA or H&R Block, any one of those options. SciENcv is very similar to that. Those tax preparation software, they give you this nice interface. They help lead you through filling out the information in the form. It'll do calculations for you. It might pull in information from another system. So you might have a W-2 that it has access to, and it'll pull the W-2 information and pre-populate some portions of the tax return on your behalf. And at the end of the day, it creates your tax return in a PDF. It will send that off to the IRS. And think of SciENcv as the same way. It's a web interface. We lead you through filling out the form. We pull in information if you have it available and some other systems that can pre-populate, make this a little bit faster for you. And when you're ready to create the document, we make the PDF. It's downloaded to your computer, and then you use that as part of your grant application process. Now, you don't have to rely entirely on TurboTax or Free Tax USA. You can have a question, you can go look at the tax code. And same thing here for SciENcv. These tools are built and support the policies and procedures guide that NSF has. It also supports for the NIH forms, the application guides there. And we do link out if you have questions about how to fill out certain parts of the form, what type of information. I have a special case. How does that apply to me? We do provide links over to this documentation so you can go and find the answer for yourself. And also, I just want to take the time, NSF, to tell you how much I really love every year. I get to see the new cover. You all have such a nice, beautiful artwork that you put on these application guides. I give you a big thumbs up, especially over our plain one. So in SciENcv, you are allowed and enabled to have as many copies of the biosketch as you would like. We know that there's investigators that have many different lines of research, and they might have a biosketch that's crafted to highlight their expertise for a particular type of grant. They might have a grant that is clinically based, and they want a biosketch that kind of highlights their expertise in that area. They might have a separate biosketch that would go out for their more basic science type of grant application. So investigators are able to have as many as they wish. They can output the PDF on demand. They click the button. SciENcv generates the PDF for the user, and it goes right onto your computer. You can review it. If there's some correction you want to make, you simply go right back into the form, correct the data as necessary, click PDF, and we'll generate another one for you. And finally, I'm sure many of you here are delegates. The delegation feature of SciENcv is very popular. This allows an assistant, someone else that's assisting the senior investigator kind of manage this information. They can input it all in there for them, and then the investigator can review it and certify it for themselves. Now, the exciting news is that we do have the new NSF forms available as of last week. both updated forms of the biographical sketch and the current and pending and other support form. And you'll see there's 4 different versions when you go to create a new document in SciENcv. So just pay close attention and make sure you're using the right one. We have the new ones are for proposals that are submitted or due on or after January 30th. And the previous versions are for proposals submitted or due before that date. Okay, so how do you access SciENcv? What you can do is, if you're like me, you just Google SciENcv. I put the link there, but I never remember that, so I always end up just Googling it. This is the SciENcv homepage. There's several options. ERA Commons is the NIH grant information software. I'm assuming that most people here will have an NSF login. You click there, it'll take you to research.gov, and you simply sign in with your NSF account, email address and password, the one that you've set up with them, the one you're always using to access your information there. You will authenticate in research.gov, and then once you successfully authenticate, you're redirected back to SciENcv. Now, I'll use another analogy. SciENcv is a tool that exists within a suite of tools. And if you think of this kind of like a house, the house would be MyNCBI, which is the system that has these different tools together. Each of the rooms in the house is a different tool and they interact with each other. So for instance, SciENcv, which helps you fill out your biosketch and your current and pending support, might pull information that you have stored in the bibliography app that's attached to it. And you get all of this as part of a MyNCBI account. Now, signing into it, if you use the National Science Foundation, the research.gov login, you have a door. You can add many doors to access information at your house. So if you have an NIH grant and you have an ERA Commons account that you manage your NIH grants with, you can link that to SciENcv, and then you can sign in using either your NIH credentials or your NSF credentials. It'll get you back to the same place. Now, Jean mentioned that we've been elevating the use of ORCID as a persistent identifier, and that also has lots of great information that is helpful for you filling out your biographical sketch. So let's work through this. What happens if, hey, I've already signed in, I have my National Science Foundation, that's how I access my account. How do I add ORCID and how do I get in there? Well, once you're signed in to your NCBI account, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner of all the web pages when you're at NCBI, your username. And if you click on that, a little menu will appear. One of the options is account settings. You simply click on there. It takes you to your account settings for your NCBI account. You will see one of the options within that panel is called linked accounts, and that shows all the doors that have been added so you can access your house. If you would like to add ORCID, you click change. We will present you with all of the options that you can add. You'll see many different university, any kind of in common is a technology that's used, but many universities across the US use this as sign-ins to their accounts. You can add any of these, but if you're looking for ORCID, you could just type ORCID into the search box. It'll pull up ORCID, click on ORCID link, and then you all authenticate into your ORCID profile at ORCID, and now you've had those linked too. There are over 4,000 different sign-in options, so there's quite a few. I'm sure one of them is going to apply to you as well. Okay, so now we've linked an ORCID account to SciENcv. And one of the things that we've changed is that we've elevated it. We now realize that if you link your ORCID account to SciENcv, you're probably interested in providing your ORCID identifier on these forms. This is now an optional field in these forms for NSF where you can add the persistent identifier. So adding your ORCID account will link that account to SciENcv. Then we'll have your ORCID ID, we will automatically add it to the account or onto the form on your behalf. You'll notice there's a little trash can icon. If you don't wish to include it at this point, because it is just optional, you do have the option to say, you know what, I don't want the ORCID ID on there. But we're assuming that the vast majority, if you've gone through the trouble of linking your ORCID account, you're interested in providing that information. Now, for those of you that have set up ORCID accounts for yourself or your investigator, you'll know that in addition to getting the identifier, you have a profile page where you can have information about yourself. And so anyone that goes and looks at your ORCID ID can then see information about yourself, your education history, grants you might have, cite things you've published, your work history. Sounds a lot like information that goes into the biographical sketch, and absolutely it is. So one of the great options is if you have an ORCID ID and an ORCID profile that's set up and you've updated it, you've maintained it, in SciENcv, when you're ready to fill out a bio sketch, if you're ready to fill out the NSF biographical sketch, you can say, use my ORCID profile that I've linked. And once you do that, our system will go right out to ORCID. It will pull in information from your profile and it will pre-populate the biographical sketch with the information in the appropriate spots. In ORCID, it might be a little difficult to see on the screen here, but the investigator, the person that has the ORCID ID, they have complete control over information in there and what is public and what is not. And we're pulling the things that you have designated as publicly available. So, yep, this is something I want to have show up on my profile. So anything that has the green indicator here is public, and that's the type of data that we're pulling from the profile to pre-populate the biosketch. Now, once the data has been put into the biographical sketch, you have complete control over that. It's static at that point. You can make any changes you want. You can, if something came in all caps and you want to change the case of it, you can go and do that. You're not going to overwrite anything in ORCID. You're just working directly in data in that particular biographical sketch. Now, there's a third thing that is really useful, particularly for NSF investigators, and that is you can add citations that you've linked and you store in your ORCID profile to your biographical sketch. ORCID has done a very great job at going out and partnering with different citation databases. I work at the NIH, and we have the PubMed database, which is fantastic if your research is in the life sciences, but NSF funds many different other types of science, physical sciences and social sciences, things that aren't typically captured in PubMed. And so you can very quickly and easily add information from these things that ORCID has partnered with and put it into your ORCID record, and then that will be made available for you in SciENcv when you've linked your accounts together. The other thing that ORCID makes really easy, and I found this out myself, is when you provide your ORCID identifier to publishers. So I published a paper this summer. The journal asked, hey, does anyone have ORCID IDs? We supplied our ORCID identifiers for the authors on that work. ORCID will find those works once they become published and automatically add it into your ORCID record. In fact, I got a notification from ORCID when it was published before the publisher actually notified me. So they're really good at looking for the IDs and making sure that your record is up to date. So ORCID takes a lot of the work out of maintaining that profile for you. So once you have your citations in ORCID, you've linked it to your account to SciENcv, this is available for you to add to your biosketch. And I'm showing a view here. There's two different tabs. One is my bibliography. This is the the bibliography tool that sits right next to SciENcv. You don't have to have ORCID link. You could put all your citations in there. But since this account has been linked to ORCID, you can pull for this section, products most closely related. There's another one for products not related to the proposed project. You get 5 in each of these categories. You can pull citations from either of these tabs once you get up to 5. And wait, there's more. There's one more thing to talk about, and that is for ORCID records that have huge author lists, which is a problem when you're confined to having a biosketch of only 3 pages. You could add 1 or 2 citations with giant author lists that this throws you right over the page limit. So one of the features of SciENcv is that you're able to edit that author list. You can trim it down according to the styles that are approved. Lots of people will put et al. After a couple authors or make sure that their name is appearing and save it. And then now you have a nice, all the information is contained. You've trimmed the author list. It is a nice compact form on the PDF that's printed out. And when you submit it to NSF, on the back side, we have data that's attached to the PDF and we have all the authors. So it's a win-win. You get to have your citations fit within a nice compact area. NSF doesn't lose any data. They get to see the entire author list. And we've been talking about persistent identifiers, and you might notice a little bit hard to see, but whenever citations have persistent identifiers, those all get brought over into the biosketch. So if there's a DOI listed, we include the DOI in the citation. I'm showing some examples here of papers that are in PubMed Central. We have those identifiers. Those are more important for NIH investigators. But whenever there is some type of URL or DOI or other type of identifying information, we include that in the citation. And using this type of ecosystem makes it very nice because the author themselves don't have to worry about including all this information. If ORCID has it and puts it into their citation, that comes over and then it's added in to the biosketch when you add those citations. All right, so we talked about some additional information that is being captured in these new forms, the 23-1 forms. The big field that you're going to see several places is now country. Country in the previous forms was optional information. Now this field is required in many of the forms. And so you're going to see we're going to have a little required red asterisk next to that field. So you'll know that you need to fill it out in this part. And then you can see there's an ORCID identifier that's been linked here. Now, this can cause an issue if you have an old form. This is one of the things to watch out for. If you filled out last year's biographical sketch, the one that's current, and you don't have country filled out, and then you say, hey, copy this over into the new format for me, you might see warnings appear once you move that over to the 23-1 form. And this is letting you know that the country field is required and you currently have it blank. So if you see this, you just need to go through and add the country information to resolve those warnings. Same thing in the appointments and positions section. That's another subtopic of the biosketch where before you've had to provide the city and the state. That has been required. Country is now required there as well. So if it hadn't been filled out in the old form, you copied it over to the new form, you might be on the lookout. We'll put warnings up if the country field is left blank so that you'll know, go in and correct that information. All right, the biggest change you're gonna see, at least interface-wise, is with the current and pending other support form. The older version of it, the one that's current now, is on the left, and the newer version is on the right. And we've really spent the better part of this past year working on this, cleaning up the interface, talking to researchers and administrators. The Federal Demonstration Partnership put out a call for users to come and work with us and do some usability tests so we could see how they enter the information, what can we add to make it easier and more accurate to add this information into the form. So you will see when you have to add a date, you can type the date in. We have in gray the format that the form is looking for. And next to it is a little calendar, and that's a little calendar tool that lets you pick the date and the year, and then we'll format it for you. You don't have to worry about it. If you leave a field blank, that's required. We will highlight that for you, let you know. If you're entering in a dollar amount, we will put the commas in for you. You don't have to worry about that. Statement of potential overlap. So this is a free text field. You have a certain number of characters. I think it might be 1,500, but don't quote me on that. Oftentimes people will have some text that they copy and paste into there, and you have a character counter. It lets you know how many characters left. If you paste in more than that, rather than just chopping it off, we say, hey, you went over by 100 characters. So you know where you can go in and easily make some changes to fix that. So these are all enhancements to the interface that helps you fill out the current and pending other support. And the exciting news also is that we're going to have the same type of interface update coming for the BioSketch later on this year. So it doesn't have it yet, but we're going to update the interface. It'll be supporting the new form that we have currently, but you'll have some of these nice enhancements later on this year. Okay, so let's talk about the document certification. In SciENcv, we've tried to make this as painless as possible. And for the senior investigators or PIs that are filling out this information, they simply, when they go to download the PDF document, a pop-up will appear in front of them with the certification information that they certify that everything is correct. We can read all the legal stuff that's in that. And when they agree to that, we certify the document. We put a timestamp, we put the name of the individual that certified it. It's stored on our systems. When we create the PDF, we put that certification information with a timestamp of when it was certified. So it makes it nice and easy for the PI. Now, delegates, let's look at what happens if someone is a delegate that's working for a PI. Well, first of all, how does that even happen? So if you have an investigator and they're like, you know what, it would really help me if you could just take over the lion's share of this for me. In that same, when you're signed into MyNCBI, your username is in the upper right corner. You click on that, and just below the linked accounts section that we saw earlier is the delegate section. And if you want to add a delegate, you click on that link, you give us the email of the person that you want to invite, and then hit OK. And what the system will do is we'll send a message to that person. They sign in to NCBI using one of those 4,000 different options. They might have a research.gov account. They can sign in with that. If they use a Google, they can sign in with that. All the same rules that we talked about earlier apply for that. The delegate, when they have signed in, they're able to make their own documents. You know, maybe it's a graduate student that has a profile of their own. But below all the SciENcv documents, you will see a link to the delegated account that they have access to. If they click on that name here, Dr. Jane Doe, you then go over and see their SciENcv account. There's a very prominent banner at the top, lets you know you're looking at the account that you've been granted delegate access to. You can work on any of these documents. You can create new ones. When you're working in a document, you will see a banner on the document as well. this is a delegated account. You're working on this person's behalf. That way you won't get confused, which one was mine, which one is the one I'm working on for the PI. We make that very prominent. All right, so what about the certification? The certification has to be done by the senior investigator or personnel that is wants to submit this document. So if the delegate is working on it, fills it all out, if they click on the PDF button after they've updated information, they're going to get a warning just letting them know that certification is required. And this lets them know, hey, you need to go tell the PI, the senior personnel person that you're done, everything is filled out, have them come review it so they can certify it. Once you let them know that, the PI will go in, they can look at either the biographical sketch or the current and pending other support document. They click on PDF, generate PDF, download PDF. They will get this pop-up that shows up again with the certification information. Once they agree to it, we produce the PDF and the certification information is appended and the timestamp and the name of the individual that certified the document. Once they've done this, if the delegate wants to go back and download a copy themselves, they're able to do that. So once the PI certified it, the delegate can come and download a copy, and maybe there's a workflow where they want to do that and put it into the stream themselves. But if any of the information is changed, if the delegate has to update something or if the PI has to update something, then it goes back to this state where the PI has to be the final person that has approved any change that's made to the document. Okay, so how can you be involved? We have an opportunity. We have a workshop coming up next month where our staff is going to walk through this in even greater detail to show how to fill this out, whether it's an NIH or NSF biographical sketch. I provide a URL there. That's where we list all our upcoming events. You can sign up for it. The other thing I want to point out, and I know people know about this because our help desk have been fielding questions, is please reach out to the team if you're having any kind of issues. We have a link at the bottom of all the pages in the SciENcv, kind of showing you the place there. It's called the Support Center. So if you click on that, you have a form, you can tell us what kind of issue that you're having, and that gives us valuable feedback. In fact, I have a couple of my staff that are here answering some of the QA questions as I've been presenting. And this has been helpful because now this is the slide I hate to show because once you launch, there's always little nagging things that you've missed that need to get corrected. Jean mentioned some of the ones in the fillable PDF that they've been on top of. I wish that we could get our updates out as fast as they're able to do for the fillable PDF. It just takes a little bit longer because these are, ours is a giant software system that goes through different checks before it's put out to the public. But we do communicate if they see something on their side that we need to fix and vice versa. We're in constant contact about that. So here's one of the issues that we have right now. We've once we launched, we discovered that if you are trying to update the current and pending support from the older version to the newer version, that our software that does that conversion has a bug and it's throwing an error message. So if you see that, we know about it. The developers are working on it now, and then we will hopefully have a fix very, very soon. You can go make a new 23-1 document and work on it perfectly fine. You can make a 22-1 and work on it perfectly fine. It's just that conversion from the older version to newer version. And if you have a really huge current pending support document, you just want to copy it all over. Yeah, that's where the issue is, and we're working to correct that. Another thing that's been brought to our attention is the professional preparation sort order, which is supposed to be in reverse chronological order. That is something that was missed, and we're working to fix that. And finally, and I saw before I started talking that someone brought it up in the Q&A, the previous version of the biographical sketch tool, it allowed you to drag citations around in the order that you wanted. The current version is not doing that. So we're having the developers look at that to make that fix. And as Gene said, we have tickets that our developers are working on right now, and we're going to have that update out as soon as we possibly can. And for my final slide, I've put on some helpful resources. The proposal and award policies and procedures guide, right? That's a huge one. I put that at the top. We have extensive documentation on how to use SciENcv, the bibliography tool, other tools you might be interested in on our bookshelf. We have a YouTube playlist that kind of gives short little videos showing many of these features. And finally, our support desk. They're a really great team. We are motivated to help you with any kind of problems that you have. So let us know how we may assist you. And with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm going to pass it back to the panel.
Okay. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Bart. And thank all of you for sending in so many questions, and to the team who is behind the scenes, just like smoke coming off the keyboards here, answering questions. And I think a lot of the questions that people were putting in towards the beginning and the middle were answered, as part of this presentation. And Bart, I think on your next to last slide, you answered like 10 questions that people had.
I should have put that at the very front, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I've tried to kind of group some of these questions, and obviously we've just got a few minutes left and we're not going to be able to get to all the questions. A lot of them are duplicates. A lot of them are very similar, but these are going to help us as we're putting together frequently asked questions documents for all of you. And so it's very helpful for us. So I wanted to start just talking a little bit about when to use which forms. So we currently have this deadline date of the PAP guide going into effect January 30th. There are biographical sketch and current pending support forms out there now for both that are current and that are to be used on or after that date. So Gene, perhaps you could talk a little bit about when those forms should be used and for which types of funding opportunity, when, basically.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And we're obviously having people very concerned that they want to do the right thing. And we know that 99% of the time, the users out there are just trying to comply with our requirements. So it goes into effect for any proposal submitted or due on or after January 30, you're going to have to use the latest version of these formats. And let me give you a great example of how that plays out, because Bart showed you taking an old template, bringing it into the new system, and showing how you might be getting errors if you're not using the right. So the system knows when it's going to have to enforce these requirements. On or after, it's going to see some things, data in there that's not on the new template, that's not on the old one. So it really behooves you to make sure that if it's submitted or due on or after January 30, that you use this new format. And we believe that it will be very helpful for you. Once you get that in, especially if you get it into SciENcv, you got it into the new format. So get it in there sooner rather than later, so that, that allows you to be compliant. And it's really an effective way of making sure you comply with NSF requirements and are using the right version. We did have some programs that were fixating on or, just around January 30, and a few of those have even decided to extend that deadline date past January 30. So there was no ambiguity about which version of the formats had to be used.
Okay, we had a lot of questions about delegates, and Bart, you talked quite a bit about towards the end about delegates, but I think it would be useful for everybody to have a full understanding of what delegates can do. So, for example, can delegates download a document to review prior to a certification? Can a PI or assign multiple delegates to their account? And then if you are just a delegate, what is the best way to access SciENcv that way? Do they need to have their own account?
Okay, sure.
There's a lot of questions, sorry, but I wanted to make sure we get them all in.
All right, I'm going to take them in reverse order from how you gave them to me. So number one, how does a delegate access? Yes, they have their own account. They set it up. They have the login that they prefer to use. It might be Google, it might be research.gov, whatever works for them. The delegate accesses the system. The way that we attach it to the request is we send an email. So the PI says, this person, here's the email address. I want this person to be my delegate. They'll get a message. They'll sign into SciENcv. Now they've been connected. When they're working in the system, they can add all the information in. They can craft the forms. We keep the stuff that's been delegated separate from their own documents. If they might have some, you asked, yes, you can have someone be a delegate for multiple people. And I've seen some cases where I really felt sorry for them. There was like 12 or 14 different delegates. They had to go in. They're managing 14 people's information. So yes, you can be a delegate to multiple PIs. So maybe your whole department or something like that. Now, the first thing he said, I'm going to address it last, was can they download an uncertified document? And we know this is version 1. We just put it out. No, we don't have that capability. We are going to take that under advisement. We'll talk with Gene about that. And then this kind of feedback is extremely helpful. We love to hear about how can we make the system support your workflow and what you're trying to do better. So appreciate suggestions like that. Thank you.
Bart, in that space, there was another question about, I'm the delegate, but my name is, when I download it, my name is appearing on the certification. And obviously, it is the PI, co-PI, or other senior personnel that needs to appear on that certification.
Okay.
So could you discuss that for a moment?
Right. So that should not be happening. It should be the PIs because they're the person that certify it. Right. So please send a message to info@ncbi, and so we'll track it when we'll investigate it ourselves. So we can address that. Thank you.
Okay, some more technical questions for you. So is there a way to tell if your downloaded document from SciENcv is the most updated format, or on the document itself?
On the document, how do you know there's not another version that's more recent than that, is what you're asking, right?
Yes.
I imagine it's going to have to, the PI is going to have to be someone that kind of determines that, because if, let's say you're a delegate and you have, I'm going to say version 5, right? If the PI is gone and made 7 other versions, you're not going to realize that unless they go and look and tell you that. So, it puts a timestamp of when it was the most recent version of certification. I don't have a better answer than that, I'm afraid.
Okay, a couple of questions on getting help from SciENcv. So if there are issues with linking an ORCID account, if any other those types of issues, how should folks be resolving those kinds of technical issues that they're having?
Nope, reach out. My advice is if you're having a problem in the SciENcv system, is write directly to the team. They're extremely good at triaginess and understanding, like, is this a problem within SciENcv? Is this a problem with ORCID linking? And so we can typically get it to the right place. If it's a policy type question about what kind of information should I include, that should go directly over to NSF. If you send it to us, and there's a few things, there's a couple policy things and a bunch of other stuff, we'll make sure that all the questions get to the right place.
Policy@nsf.gov.
There you
That's
go.
where those go.
And again, I want to, we're just about out of time here. I know there's a million questions. We didn't get to all of them. A lot of them, mostly, I hope we answered the most pressing questions that you have, but we understand you'll still have questions. We'll be there to answer them for you, as Jean said, policy@nsf.gov. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We'd really appreciate it if you can complete our survey. We're going to drop that survey link in the chat for you. And those surveys results will really help us shape future content. So again, I want to thank all of our presenters and everybody behind the scenes answering questions for us, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.